All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. They will do my preview and prediction for number 3, Michigan versus number 2, Ohio State. The game, the long-awaited contest between these two schools. They are both at 11-0. Both got past some tough contests in Week 12. Ohio State barely survived Maryland, and Michigan, they also barely survived Illinois with a last-second field goal. But they're now both undefeated, battling for a spot in the Big Ten title game and presumably a playoff spot. Spread -7 for Ohio State, 57.5 is the over-under, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox. Ohio Stadium in Columbus. History of the series, 59-51 to 6. Michigan leads at all time, and they did win last year, ending a pretty lengthy losing streak to the Buckeyes. Looking at the Michigan offense, for the most part of the year, it's been a pretty sound unit with balance. I know against Illinois, it was not all that great. Only 19 points, 7 of those in the first half. Did not have much rhythm through the air. Struggled to run the ball after that first drive, or after the scoring drive, rather. Blake Corum went down. They were not able to do much in the second half running the ball. Corum, day-to-day right now, 1,457 yards, 18 touchdowns. He was able to return. He got one touch in that second half after suffering a knee injury that looked, pretty bad to begin with, and then, he was able to come back. So I do anticipate he'll be healthy. I don't know how healthy he will be. I'm not sure if he'll be at 100% for this one. But Corum, they need him. If they don't have him, they're just automatically going to lose this game, I would say. He's just such a game changer, the way he runs. Obviously, this offensive line is terrific. Donovan Edwards is really good, 471 yards and 4 touchdowns for him on the year. But he's also battling some health issues. He's only played in 8 games this year. He missed last week against Illinois. So right now, not ideal timing for Michigan for, the identity of their football team to be kind of questionable right now with injuries in the backfield. I do anticipate both of those players will play. Corum last year going into this game wasn't 100%. He did rip off a big run, but it was really the Hassan Haskins show. That's a big storyline to watch this week with Michigan. It's really the only storyline to watch is their backfield. J.J. McCarthy, 67% completion rate, almost 2,000 yards, 177 yards through the air per game, 14 touchdowns, 2 picks. We added a different spark to the offense this year. Cade McNamara, you knew that he was probably going to lose the job eventually to McCarthy because he's just so talented. He's got some nice pocket awareness. He's certainly still improving in his first year of starting from week to week. Tough environment here. They're going on the road. That's why the running game is going to have to be very good. And I anticipate they will be. This offensive line, it's, just as good as it was a season ago, maybe even better. Victor Oluwadimi, he's been phenomenal for them at center, the Virginia transfer. Zach Zenner at guard. Ryan Hayes at tackle. These guys have been terrific. This offensive line, the numbers aren't as good as it was last year, but it just seems that they've not had much fall off in the running game. They do run the ball very well. That's going to be the entire identity of their football team. 243 yards per contest. They do that on a weekend basis. They ran all over Ohio State last year. It was a big total there against the Buckeyes, and that's going to be what they're looking to do here. The Ohio State defense, we'll talk about them in a minute. Certainly the jury is still out with them, so they're going to look to ground and pound. J.J. McCarthy, though, his playmaking ability is something that's going to put him over the top, and that's what they lacked against Georgia in the playoff last year. As the run game got stuffed, offense just turned. It had not been one-dimensional often in 2021, but against the Bulldogs, you can't run the ball. McNamara was not going to get it done, and that's where J.J. McCarthy comes in. So if they do go one-dimensional, he can certainly handle the pressure with his skill set. 48 receptions, 641 yards, 2 touchdowns for Ronnie Bell. He did not play last year with a torn ACL. They're so glad to have him back. Luke Schoonmaker, he's been a little beat up the last couple weeks as well. He's their second-best pass catcher, 30 grabs, 215 yards. Cornelius Johnson, he's a big-time jump ball guy, only 25 grabs, of course. Roman Wilson, these guys are deep, I'd say, not incredibly deep. Donovan Edwards catches a handful of passes as well. This is a good receiving core, though, for Michigan. They're reliable. They're slightly productive. The stat sheet's not too impressive, but they do exactly what they need to do, considering they run for 240-plus yards a game. So top to bottom, this is a really good Michigan offense. Score a little under 40 points per game. They're going to love to run the football. Biggest storyline, though, will be watching that backfield and see what the health is on those guys. They've only lost 6 turnovers this year, so Michigan, they protect the football. They like to grind it down. That's going to be the game plan once again here against Ohio State. Looking at the Buckeyes' offense, 46.5 points per contest. C.J. Stroud right now is the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. It's not been that spectacular of a season for Stroud. 9.7 yards per attempt. That's really good. 2,991 yards for him. It's a little low considering he had 4,400 yards last year in one more game. His yardage total is nowhere near what it is this season. Of course, 28 attempts per game compared to the 37 he had last season. 35 touchdowns, 4 picks. Those numbers check out, of course. Stroud, though, he's still phenomenal, incredibly resilient, has not been tested too much this year. The Buckeyes have not had a very tough schedule, of course. They've not been in too many tough situations either, other than maybe the Penn State game where things were going sideways there for a bit. He played very well, especially late in that game. Michigan State, 6 touchdowns, 377. A tough road environment there. Notre Dame was giving him fits all the way back in week 1 for most of that game. He stood in there and delivered for this football football team. Stroud, he's been great this year. Obviously, the yards total is far different than it was a season ago, but Ohio State's doing something this year that they weren't doing much last year, and this is something I talked about in the offseason, is they need to run the ball more, and they need to be committed to it. You look at how many times they've ran for 40-plus attempts this season. It was only twice last year. They did that, it looks like 5 or 6 times this year, including the last 2 games. Now, Ohio State certainly committed to running the football, but they've not been great at doing it the last couple of games. Iowa, 66 yards, 98 against Penn State. They just could not run the ball in that one. A hard-fought 207 yards against Northwestern. There was really off-chunk plays, though, by C.J. Stroud. Mayan Williams, he got 100-plus. But it was hard fought, especially in that first half. They could not find any breathing room on the ground one bit. Only 21 points. They could not throw the ball with how bad the weather was that day, and they just could not run the ball. 340 against Indiana. They bounced back there against an easy opponent. 160 against Maryland. Dalton Hayden, of course, he exploded. He had 140-some yards and 3 touchdowns, 146 yards, 3 touchdowns in that second half. He was big for them against Maryland. This is a backfield that has 3 500-plus rushers, but they've battled health themselves. Henderson, 11 carries, 19 yards this past game against Maryland. He's just not back to 100%. Mayan Williams didn't play. 783 and 13 touchdowns for him. He's more of the bruiser. Henderson, he's a big back, too. 5'10", 214. He's got some speed. And Hayden, he's a smaller guy. He's got a lot of speed as well, at 195 pounds, the freshman. So this backfield, very deep, very talented. The running game this year, though, it's been very inconsistent, I would say, considering, they had 4 straight games of 200-plus yards from September into October. And it's just not been the same since, other than the Indiana game where they beat up on the Hoosiers. That's been very concerning. It was a big problem against Penn State, a team that Michigan ran all over, and then Ohio State, they had significant issues there. This passing game, though, they're as good as ever, even without Jackson Smith-Njigba. Of course, he's not going to play in this game. Regardless of what happens with Ohio State the rest of the year, I don't expect JSN to see the field again. I think his Ohio State career is over, and he's going to go to the NFL. Marvin Harrison Jr., though, this guy's phenomenal. 65 grabs, 1,037 yards, 11 touchdowns, 6'4", 205. The skill set he has for that size is just tremendous. He's obviously going to be a top draft pick in a couple years himself. Emeka Egbuka, 57 grabs, 914 yards, 8 touchdowns. He's looking to be the second guy to clear 1,000 yards this year for Ohio State. Back-to-back seasons with 2,000-yard receivers is what Ohio State is in store for. Julian Fleming averages 17 yards per catch, 6 touchdowns, a great slot weapon for them. Cade Stover, I love his hands, 31 grabs, 386, 5 touchdowns. He's a heck of a blocker, too. That's a guy that's really rose his draft stock this season, is Cade Stover. Ohio State, top to bottom, this is an offense that is really good. This offensive line, they are elite, I would say. Luke Weipler, DeJuan Jones, Paris Johnson, that tackle duo, these guys have been great this season in pass blocking. Weipler has been a heck of a pass blocker himself. No sacks allowed between those guys. Matthew Jones also. None of these guys have allowed sacks this year. Donovan Jackson, though, he's been a little iffy at guard. That's one guy they're going to look to attack, I would say. But top to bottom, Ohio State offense is flawless. Not as explosive as you thought they would be coming into the year. They haven't exactly had that wow factor, I would say, just because of some of the inconsistencies this year, like the Northwestern game and the Penn State game. But overall, this is a really good offense. It's going to be tough for Michigan to contain. Looking at that Michigan defense, this is a unit that lost a lot. They lost their defensive coordinator. They only got 3 starters back coming into the year, and they got better. They lost Aiden Hutchinson, David Ojabo from their pass rush, and it didn't really seem to bother them because they've just filled in these roles nicely. Guys like Jalen Harrell, Mike Morris, 2 guys I talked about coming into the year. Morris, though, he's been phenomenal, even better than I thought he would be. 11 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. This is a run defense that has not cracked one bit this year, second nationally in yards per game allowed. Illinois did have 148. Chase Brown had an interesting day there for them. That's only the 4th time they've allowed 100-plus yards this season. They've really had no problems defending the run regardless of opponent. Other than that Illinois game, I would say it was the only blemish really on this record, which is unfortunate that it happened a week before you play a running attack that can really tear you apart in Ohio State. But overall, this is a really good defense. Junior Colson, a linebacker, he's been terrific for them. Leads the team with 73 tackles. I think that the interior defensive line is a big part of why this team's so successful. You got Mozzie Smith, of course. He was one of the lone returning starters from last year. Chris Jenkins, he's been phenomenal for them in run defense. Mason Graham as well. This is a very good defensive line. It starts with that interior pass rush. Iwabi, Ike coming off the edge. This is a versatile defensive front, I would say, for Michigan. 31 sacks on the year, which is also tied with the Buckeyes for second in the conference. Mainly, the biggest reason they won last year was because of how the secondary played. Ohio State, they're going to get their fair share of yards. There's no debate around that, but it's about can you defend the big plays, and that's something they did great last year. I don't think they allowed a single completion of 40-plus yards against the Buckeyes, and that's where they like the wins. They like to stress your secondary, big plays. That really starts to open things up, and these guys have been great this year. They do not give up much. Will Johnson, he's really starting to come into that corner position nicely. R.J. Moat and Rod Morris is a very good secondary for Michigan. They're going to look to play a lot of man coverage. They're going to look to play some more zone also, though. And if they're going to have to follow last year's script, I do like what they have at corner, or nickel rather, in Mike Sandstrill. We made that full-time conversion from wide receiver, and he's played very well. He's also a heck of a tackler, which is going to be very important. They've done a great job of getting their defensive backs involved here in stopping the run, and that's a big reason why they are second in college football in defending the run. This is a Michigan defense, though, I think has just been great. Of course, the schedule, much like Ohio State, it's nothing too crazy, but they played very well against Penn State. They were battle tested against Illinois, but they didn't give up much at all through the air in that one. Only 178 yards. They had a middle stretch of the year where they kind of struggled against Maryland and Iowa. But for the most part, this has been a secondary that's very, very good. I think the pass rush certainly helps them out. But, guys like Jerman Green, Will Johnson, they're going to have big-time tasks. D.A. Turner as well out there on the edge. And I like their ability to win some of those matchups. I don't know if they'll win every single one of them, but I think they like what they have and being able to, contain those guys, not give up the big plays. I do think they have nice tackling ability out on the edge too. Guys like Rod Moore, Green. But this is a really good defense top to bottom. I do think that interior defensive line, though, Donovan Jackson, I pointed him out earlier, that's a guy they're going to look to attack. I think they're going to look back and they're going to sit in coverage and they're going to send their front forward. That's how they're going to play this game. I don't expect them to send too many blitzes, and that's how they're going to have to win. So can they win that matchup? I'm confident they can, but it's going to come down to Saturday on the plane to see what happens. Looking at the Ohio State defense, Jim Knowles did a pretty good job of this unit, giving up 16.9 points per game. Much like last year, though, the jury is still out on this unit. Remember, last year struggled early on in the year, and 10 weeks later, they played great for that many games, and then they played Michigan, got completely stonewalled, and I think the jury's still out on them. They still gave up 371 passing to Penn State. That was not good. Sean Clifford pieced them apart, 300-plus here against Maryland last week. Northwestern was running downhill with ease against them. Indiana, had 150 yards. That was a blowout, though. But if you look at the stat sheet, Ohio State, they've been playing great this year, 4.5 yards per play allowed. They did very well week one, all the way back in September 3rd against Notre Dame. But, look at the schedule. They've not played too many tough offenses, and the ones they have, Penn State, there's no excuse that offense had almost 500 yards in that one. That shouldn't have happened. I think the jury's still definitely out on this defense, and I don't think it's really promising. Tommy Eichenberg's been terrific, though. This is a guy that really struggled last year, and this year he's just been their best player by far. 105 tackles, 12 TFL, 2.5 sacks. He's got a pick, which was a touchdown. He's been the heart and soul of this football team. Steele Chambers is the second leading tackler there, a linebacker. Like the safety duo, Laven Ransom, Ronnie Hickman. These guys have been good tacklers, have been really good in coverage. But this is a different test. Guys like Ronnie Bell, J.J. McCarthy's talent. Michigan's not going to really challenge you too much downfield or passing attack, even though they do have guys capable of winning downfield. They're going to look to ground and pound. And, even though on the stat sheet they look like they did good against the run, Penn State, they were pretty solid in running the ball, at least on first down. They weren't able to establish a running game for the most part of that game. And again, Northwestern, they were just they had almost 60 attempts, so the stat sheet doesn't look great, but they were having good success doing that early in that football game. You're going to have to look to guys like JT Tuimoloau, who's been great this year, 9 TFL, 2 picks, which came against Penn State, 4 sacks. He had a phenomenal day that afternoon. Michael Hall, Jack Sawyer, Zach Harrison's been really by committee in terms of this pass rush. They got plenty of guys that are capable. No one's really taken over that lead role as a pass rusher. Defensive tackle Michael Hall, again, 4.5 sacks. That's the team high. This is a team I think they're probably going to struggle against the run. I do think the toughness is still, opinionated, of course, but I do think that they've struggled with toughness. That was a big problem last year, and I think that might be a problem here against this good offensive line. This is a rate prove-it game for their defense. They've not really had that opportunity this year. I thought the Penn State game was maybe a bit of a prove-it opportunity, and they didn't really prove much in that one. So this is a big opportunity to make waves with the committee. But overall, you're going to look at the same thing as last year. They gave up 297 rushing yards to this football team, and they were getting bodied by everyone that could run the ball last year. And I think that's probably what's going to happen in this one. If they can step up and slow down the run, though, they're going to have a great chance of winning this game. Third and long situations. I do like this secondary's ability to make plays. I think Jim Knowles will call a good defense if they're going to put Michigan in obvious passing situations. So overall, the defense has been sound, but this is the biggest opportunity of the year to prove that they are actually much different than they were a season ago. Looking at team comparisons, quarterback C.J. Stroud gets the edge easily. Heisman favorite right now. Very calm, very resilient. That's my favorite thing about him and his traits. Great downfield accuracy. A lot of confidence. He gets the edge easily over there, over the first-year starter McCarthy. Running back, both teams are pretty deep, but I think Corum and Edwards, I'm going to give them the edge over the trio of Ohio State. Obviously people are going to be like, that doesn't make much sense, but I think Corum individually is very strong, almost 1,500 yards, 18 touchdowns. Heck of a player. If he has a big game in this one, he could enter the Heisman picture. Wide receiver, pretty unanimous there. Ohio State, they're going to get that one easily. Offensive line, Michigan, I'm going to give them the edge there just because I think their offensive line's been much better when it comes to producing on the ground by far. 243 yards for the Wolverines. They've not had a game like the Buckeyes have had numerous ones where they've struggled to run the ball. Michigan's not really had a game like that. These guys have stayed sound. They've stayed strong, and they've been able to clear piles each and every single week. If you look at their game log, they're easily topping 200-plus yards. And again, 418 yards rushing against Penn State, while Ohio State struggled to clear the 100-yard mark in that one. I think that's a big indicator of what you're looking at. Ohio State's offensive line, though, very good, but they don't really generate that push again, in the run department. So defensive line, I'm gonna give Michigan the edge there. I just think they've done a great job of defending the run, getting after the quarterback. Of course, both teams are tied with 31 sacks. Ohio State's defensive line not as productive, I would say, as the Wolverines. Tommy Eichenberg, he's great, but I'm going to give Michigan's linebackers just a slight edge. I like Junior Colson there. That's another one that's probably kind of even, kind of like the offensive line. It's a little even, but I do think Michael Barrett, as senior, he's played very well. Those two guys there for the Michigan Wolverines. Ohio State, of course, they have former running backs converted over to linebacker in Chambers and Chip Trainum. So it's not the greatest position. Eichenberg has really carried that unit this year in the middle. And then the secondary, I'm going to give the edge to Michigan. I think it's just a much better secondary in terms of playmaking. And they've not allowed many big plays this year, Ohio State. I mean, they haven't been bad either at all, but, they weren't great against Penn State, of course, and against Maryland, they were giving up a lot of space as well. So, not a lot of sample size for these two teams. The schedules have not been great. I mean, you play who's on your schedule, so you can't really blame them, but I think Michigan, their secondary is better than the Buckeyes. Looking at the final thoughts on the prediction, keys of the game for Michigan, ground and pound, kind of like last year. I mean, that's their MO. That's what they did last year in this game, and they've did that all season long with great success. Secondary is to keep everything in front of them. Again, I'm going to refer to the 2021 contest. They were keeping things in front of them. Ohio State still had their near 400-plus passing yards, but they weren't giving up big plays, and that's going to be a great key as, make this offense earn it. They're going to have to fight hard, and C.J. Stroud is incredibly resilient, so they were able to keep up in that game for the most part until it got away from them there at the end. But, the harder it is on the Buckeyes, the harder it's going to be for this offense to thrive if they can't throw the ball downfield, especially with how their running game has been very inconsistent this year. For the Buckeyes, showcase that toughness on defense. That was a big problem last year, is they had no toughness against the run, and that's why they got dominated, and I still think the jury is out on that toughness. And find a ground game. Again, I refer to how inconsistent the ground game has been for Ohio State. That's something they need to do. It just seems to be so much tougher for this offense to thrive when they can't run the football. If they can do that, they really control the clock. They really control opportunities. They wear down these defenses, and that's really how they get stressed when they showcase that balance. Prediction, Michigan 35, Ohio State 30. I think Michigan's going to do what they did last year. They're going to run the ball very well. I'm not very confident in this Buckeye defense up front to showcase that toughness I keep alluding to. I think they're going to do a good job in the secondary as well. This is a unit that's got a lot of veterans, and then they have a true freshman, Will Johnson, of course. I think they're going to hold it pretty well on the outside. I do like the safety group they have as well. G.J. Turner played in this game a season ago, Mike Sandstrill and nickel. I think this is going to be a really good opportunity for these corners to shine, all the defensive backs really. And I think Ohio State, they're going to struggle to throw the ball and make those big plays. I do think they're going to struggle to run the ball also. Second-ranked run defense for Michigan. I think they're going to not completely stonewall them. The Buckeyes will have their success, but they're not going to be able to control and have that balance they want. I'm going to take Michigan in this game. It's going to be a good one. I think they'll clinch their opportunity in the Big Ten title game. With this one's going to be great. We've been waiting all year for this one. I'm going to take the Wolverines, though, as 7-point dogs to cover and win outright. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.